Hey, it's Mike Hambright with FlipNerd.com. Welcome back for another exciting VIP interview where I interview some of the most successful real estate investing experts and entrepreneurs in the industry to help you learn and grow. Today I'm joined by Greg White with Imagine Home Realty out of Detroit. He's a real estate investing expert, speaker, author, advisor, and focuses purely on Detroit, a market that many people assume is down for the count. But Greg knows that's not true, and he's here today to discuss what they're doing in Detroit and how there's a massive opportunity if you know what you're doing. Before we get started with Greg, it's going to be real exciting. Before we get started, let's take a moment to recognize our featured sponsors. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days. Rates start as low as 9%. We'd also like to thank National Real Estate Insurance Group, the nation's leading provider of insurance to the residential real estate investor market. From individual properties to large-scale investors, National Real Estate Insurance Group is ready to serve you. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Hey, Greg, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Good. So, Detroit is a really interesting topic. Whenever you kind of say that word or the name of that city, people have certain connotations in their mind about what's going on there. And obviously the market's been down for a while. But as I know, in all honesty, I would love to, in my market, Dallas, which has been a pretty resilient market, I would love to have a bad market back. I would love to have 08, 09. That's where you know, when the competition leaves and deals are easier to come by. You know, I tend to thrive in those markets, and so it seems like there's a huge opportunity in Detroit, and I know that you believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest with you, recessions and down markets are where we all make our money. It's impossible for us all to flip and us all to make a lot of money whenever it's top of the market. There's no room left for things. So that's one of the things that are so exciting about Detroit. Although it is coming back and it's on its way back, it's still very close to bottom of the market. Many of the other areas like Atlanta and Vegas and some of the other ones, South Florida, where they're already back.
Sure. Well, hey, Greg, before we start talking about what you're doing up there and some of the exciting opportunities that are going on, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. My name is Greg White, broker out of Detroit. I've been in real estate for 12 years. I own a real estate brokerage here named Imagine Home Realty, as well as a property management company and a construction company named New Wave Superior Property Management and Imagine Construction Management. They all kind of fall into the Imagine Home family of companies, which I own those all. And we started a handful of years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago. I was doing traditional sales, just working at a real estate one office, real estate executive's office after that, just doing regular real estate, doing a little bit of short sales, REOs whenever I could get my hands on them because they were so competitive and hard to get my hands on. Mm-hmm. And then one day I got a call from a gentleman out in California who said, hey, it's really down and I want to buy some properties while it's down. And I said, are you crazy? And I said, let me try to find somebody in the space that does investment properties because, to be honest with you, I don't really have a lot of experience. Let me see if I can find you a good referral. So we got to talking and kind of built a relationship. And he said, no, don't refer me. Let's do this together. And I said, all right, I'm willing to, but I just want to be open and honest with you that I'm not an expert in it. He said, that's okay. We'll learn together. So I said, okay. So that relationship turned into buying one property and us trying to find somebody to rehab it, with nightmare stories of finding Craigslist people to rehab it, property management companies that were ran out of people's basement, fly by night. The guy lost thousands and thousands of dollars. But eventually we settled that score, and I said, all right, well, I'm going to start this myself. So then came the construction arm of the business and ultimately the property management side of the business. So for a year, we started with one, and we did 144 properties in that first year with this gentleman.
Okay. Wow. Wow. And those are properties that he wanted to keep as rentals, or?
Yeah, all those properties. I believe he still has most of them to this day as rentals. So that's kind of what got my motors running. I said, wait, I don't have to get in a car. I don't have to put a buyer in my car and go run around town to 1,000 properties and show them all properties they're not going to like, and do it this way. I can sell a property from behind my desk, and it was the greatest idea ever, and it really worked out.
Yeah. Yeah. So, talk about kind of what's going on in Detroit, from a, coming back mentality. I mean, I know there's still a long ways to go, but I know that there's a right way to invest there and a wrong way. So talk about kind of what you see that's going on, and what I guess maybe let's talk about some of the mistakes that you see people making in the market.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll start there with as far as Detroit and its rebound. So Detroit is kind of a scary word whenever people say it. Anybody that's never been to Detroit, they automatically get all these thoughts and ideas in their head that as soon as they get off the plane at DTW, that they're instantly going to be shot, that there's murders happening on every street corner, that you can't walk around, all those things. And Detroit's just like any other big city. I mean, every big city has some sort of crime and things that everybody doesn't like to talk about. It's a little bit depressing and things like that. But every big city has it. Baltimore has it. DC has it. Detroit has it. Chicago has it. I could go on for days. Point is, every big city has it. Detroit isn't too terribly worse than that. The only difference is we have blight mixed in with it. So it just looks so much worse on the surface, because at least on the south side of Chicago or something like that, you have crime, you have some gangs, you have things like that, but there's not too much blight. The city at least has the money and the police force to try to battle it and try to clean up, enforce laws, things like that. For a long time, between the corruption from the Kwame Kilpatrick administration, which I'm sure everybody heard about that. The guy's in jail for, I don't know, 400 years or something crazy like that. All these things caused Detroit to fall. And really, at the end of the day, it was the auto manufacturing. Almost every single person that lives here, myself included, I moved here from Kentucky when I was 10 years old. The reason I came was because my parents couldn't find any work. So ultimately, what's the thing to do? You go to Detroit, where you can work on a line and buy your house and have the American dream. So when that collapsed, it affected Detroit really adversely, and we lost a lot of population. Detroit's population was about 2.2 million in the height in 03, 04, 05. We fell all the way below 700,000 in 2010. Now we're coming back. We're back over 1.4 million now as of
that's great.
Last month. So lots of good growth, but just to kind of give everybody an idea, you hear all those scary things about Detroit, but that doesn't mean that it's really that way. From a person who lives here, who spends time in the city every single day of their life, it's still a good city, and there's still a lot of good people there. It's just a depressed market, and all depressed markets go through some form of this. It's just Detroit got hit a little bit harder.
Right. So I know that there's a huge difference, obviously, between in the inner city and the suburbs as well. And you primarily are investing in the inner city, right?
No, the Metro Detroit area overall. So the Metro Detroit area is the Tri-County area. It's Wayne County, which is where Detroit falls in, and then Oakland and Macomb County. I cover those three areas. And the good thing is, not only do I run these companies, but I'm a real estate investor myself. I did really well out in Vegas a handful of years ago, did well in South Florida. Kansas City I did pretty good in. But now that ability is right in my backyard, which is great. So I'm happy to be on the show here, which is really focused on flipping, because there's a lot of opportunity. When everybody thinks Detroit, they specifically think Detroit. That's not the case. The very cool thing about southeastern Michigan is we have the Tri-County area, and you can touch every single price point, all within a 10-minute drive from one another. So you can be in the downtown Detroit area, and the properties around there are maybe $10,000, $15,000 a piece, where there's not a lot of flipping potential. But you can go outside to the city where I live in, called Ferndale. That's maybe 10, 15 minutes outside of the city, and the properties are 100, 150,000. You get a great deal on one of those for 70, 80 grand, and flip it and make it quick, 30, 40,000. So there's all sorts of different opportunities here, and there's every single price point all within a handful of miles from one another.
Sure. And do you invest in the city at all, or do you try to stay out of the city?
No, I invest in the city myself. I own a handful of rentals. I don't even know how many off the top of my head. I own a lot of rentals down there. I flip a lot of properties down there. If I'll buy a property, rehab it, and put a tenant in it, and then some overseas guy wants to buy a turnkey. He doesn't want to take the time to do it. He just wants to earn the rent, right from that day one when we do the closing. So we pro rent the rate as part of closing and starts earning that day.
Okay.
So many different options here.
So you do a few different things, right? You have a kind of a turnkey model, and you have a construction company and property management that you can, come into play as necessary. And then do you also, why don't you go ahead and talk about your model and kind of the different varieties of things that you do for typical investment when you work with investors and you're not investing for yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So whenever I'm working with an investor, the first thing to find out is, what do they want? That's the most important thing to find out. Do they want to get a property that is pretty much hands off, nice and easy, or do they want to do it the hard way but save a little money? So there's two ways to invest out here, really, which I call it. There's the turnkey way, and then I like to call it the right way, but it's not always the right way for everyone.
Which one of those is the hard way, and which one of those is the easy way?
Turnkey is the easy way. So you're just buying a package. So you go to the store and you buy something that's nice. It's in a bow. You buy it, you take it home, and you do what you want with it. That's what turnkey property is. The other way is to buy, rehab, and then flip or hold. That's the harder way, but it's the cheaper way. So turnkey, you buy it day one, you start making rent. Okay, you don't have to do anything else. The management company handles everything for you. Life's good. It's a phenomenal investment. You paid a little bit more, so your ROI, your return on investment, isn't quite as high. You might only be at 15 to 18%, which is amazing, by the way. 15 to 18%, maybe 20% ROI on the turnkey because you paid a higher purchase price on it. So you might buy that one for $25,000 or $30,000. It rents for $750 a month. Okay, you buy it, done, collect money, and you can buy one of those. You can buy 100 of those, however you want to grow your portfolio. Then there's the other way, which is to buy a property on or off market, which we can find together. So usually they're an REO or a foreclosure, something along those lines. So we might buy that property. It's identical. It's cookie cutter. It sits right next to the property that was $35,000. But this one, because it needs rehab, we can buy it for $7,000. Okay, we'll buy it for $6,000, $7,000, $10,000, whatever the case may be. We'll buy it for $10,000. We'll call it. We rehab it for $10,000. Okay, then you have a complete asset at $20,000. You were going to pay $30,000 for this one over here because someone's already done the hard work for you. You have this one at $20,000. And now we put a tenant in it. The process takes a little bit longer. The closing process takes 2 to 3 weeks for a cash deal. The rehab process will take 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how much rehab it needs. It'll take us 2 or 3 weeks to find a good tenant, preferably Section 8 in the property. So instead of just 3 weeks to buy and close on this property, now you're looking at a month and a half, maybe 2 months on this one, but you save $10,000. So you can buy 1.5 of these for every one of these you buy.
Sure. And talk a little bit about kind of the inventory that's available. I mean, I know a lot of people, again, when you start to have these connotations of neighborhoods that are kind of bombed out, boarded up houses, and are houses where there's squatters or vacant houses. I mean, are these the types of, in the city at least, are these the types of houses that you're typically buying? Are you buying them directly from a seller? It sounds like you do some REOs and some other things, but what I mean, I'm kind of having these connotations of houses on eBay for $1,000, $2,000 and stuff. Some of the stuff that we talked about earlier. Yeah. Are those the typical deals that that you're buying, or are you buying something that's not quite that bad?
Yeah, something that's not that bad. I mean, I hope I'm not stepping on eBay's toes or something here, but if somebody gave me the $1,000 to buy a property off eBay, I wouldn't buy the property off eBay.
Yeah.
So, same thing with a couple of different places. I probably wouldn't buy them if it was somebody else's money that they gave to me for free. Not because it's not a real property, because likely you'll probably end up with a real property. The question is, you have no idea what kind of shape it's in. So one of the things that we focus on is I really only deal with warranty deed properties. So when you're buying the properties on eBay or a couple other things I won't name, you can buy these properties here. They come with quitclaim deeds, and normally the quitclaim deeds come with $8,000 worth of back taxes, a $2,000 backwater bill, possible liens, all of these things. So it might seem like a great deal, but it's not a great deal, because you could have more in back taxes than the asset's even worth. So about killing your equity, you can kill the entire deal that way. So by buying a property, a bank-owned property, or a private-owned property, or an off-market property from another investor, or a pool sale from Fannie Mae, something along those lines, when I buy those properties, we guarantee that they're warranty deeds, so they're all marketable. So you're not going to have any issue in holding that long term, or even if you want to resell it. So that's the most important thing. But as far as bombed out neighborhoods and things like that, Detroit's a very big city land mass wise compared to some other places. You can fit 10 New York cities probably inside of Detroit, maybe even more. But out of the entire land mass of Detroit, I only buy in probably maybe 30% of it right now currently. That a year ago was only about 10% I bought in. So that's good. That proves something. That proves good progress. The city's starting to do things. They're starting to brighten up neighborhoods. They're doing a lot more demolition. And I'll talk about that shortly, about all the different things that the city itself is doing. But
sure.
That area that I stick in is very small. And the reason being, there's a lot of areas in Detroit that just you don't want to be in. They're not great areas. And it's not because of the people. It's not because of the crime, although that contributes to it. There's just a lot of areas that there's too many burned down or vacant properties. And it doesn't really affect, you could have the nicest house in the world on one of these streets. The issue is the end game. So I can't get it rented out, or the investor that's going to buy it as a flip is not going to be able to rent it out. And if it can't be rented, it's a complete moot point. Everything we did, it's all for none.
Yeah, yeah. So talk a little bit about the quality of the rental market, like what's going on there from a rent standpoint. How stable is it? Do you think there is more or less turnover than other similar markets because of it being Detroit? I mean, how I'm just trying to get a gauge on how stable of a rental market it is.
As far as the rental market, how much people are looking for rentals, it's incredibly high. It's one of the highest we've ever been. Take this for instance. So we were at 2.2 million population in 2003, 2004, as I discussed. Then we fell below 700,000. All those houses, they got foreclosed on. So back then, people were giving mortgages away like water. If you put your hand up, they'd give them to you. When all those people got foreclosed on, the banks took those back. A lot of them ended up as vacant houses or burnt down or ultimately demolished by now, whatever the case may be. Our population now went from 700 to 1.4. So that means we've doubled. But all those people didn't have houses. They had a house at one point. They left to find work once the auto industry crashed. But now that the auto industry's back, they're rehiring, things are good. A lot of people are coming back home. Their family, their friends are here. They have to live somewhere. And most of those people, it hasn't been long enough for their bankruptcy or foreclosure to fall off the record. Ultimately, that means high demand for rentals. So our rental market is an absolute high. Two things happen whenever the economy does bad. The used car market and the rental market go incredibly high. It's because people can't afford a car loan or can't qualify for a car loan. They can't qualify for a mortgage. So yeah, those two things are incredibly hot out here right now. As far as turnover, I would say we have higher turnover than the next city, and that's just because of the amount of rentals. I seen a statistic the other day, and don't quote me on it, but it's something pretty close. 81%, I believe it said on the news, 81% of the housing in the city is rented right now, is a rental. So
is a rental property. Wow.
So somebody is renting it some way or another, 81% of the housing. So that means that there's only 19% home ownership in the city of Detroit. So there's a lot available, but with as fast as the population's growing again, there's not enough good people doing it the right way, non-slum wards, to satisfy all these people that are coming back home.
Yeah. Well, why don't you share a couple of experiences or stories that you have on how some people that saw an opportunity in Detroit and either worked with, not to throw anybody under the bus, but worked with somebody or did something that is a strategy to where people are kind of getting burned. And I mean, what's some examples of people not doing it the right way? And maybe they didn't know it wasn't the right way initially, but.
Whenever I first got into this, back in maybe 10, 11, there was this huge thing going on. It was with these different companies that were just springing up out of nowhere. A lot were in the UK, a lot were in France, Ireland, Australia, even off on the West Coast, California, places like San Francisco, things like that. A lot of people were opening these companies and they were buying these properties and then selling them to investors with this great return and guaranteed rents and all of these things. So these people, complete con artists, but actually geniuses, made an absolute ton of money off these people's kindness and ultimately it was their misfortune. But what people were doing was they would buy an asset in Detroit. They'd buy one off eBay or they'd buy it wherever it may be for $5,000, maybe $2,000, whatever the case may be. They rehabbed it, okay? And then they put a tenant in it and they would sell it to one of these overseas people who never took the time to get on a plane to come see it. They just saw a 30% return on their money that was guaranteed, and it was the greatest deal since sliced bread. You got to get really lucky in the stock market or something like that to get 30% cash on cash return. It's almost unheard of, right? So these unsuspecting investors were like, this is the greatest thing ever. They talked to the people talked real sweet, and so they sold them the properties. So these people would buy these properties in 2010, 11 for $80,000, $90,000, and they would guarantee them this return on their investment. So what the people did was they were buying this asset, okay, for $1,000. They would rehab it. They would rent it out. They were simply taking the people's $80,000, $90,000. They would guarantee that rent for 2 years. So they were just paying them back with the difference between the $1,000 they bought it for and the $80,000 they got them for. They would pay them back with their own money for 2 years. Of course, they would get the property deeded to them. It was a real transaction, but they were just never here. So the property management company was paying them every single month. At the end of 2 years, okay, your rent's guaranteed. Oh, sorry to tell you, your tenant moved out and they destroyed your property. All along, there was never a tenant. There was never anything. They would come back with this. And now the people walk away with $55,000 in free cash. So that was happening on every single corner. If I had $1 for every phone call or email that I've had about one of those nightmare stories, can you help me, Greg? Can you save this property? I probably wouldn't even have to invest anymore. So that is the biggest nightmare story that I've heard, and it happened for a really long time until investors were wise.
Talk a little bit about like the financing, like how I know for a lot of real estate investors, obviously getting access to capital is difficult in a lot of places. I got to assume it's more difficult in Detroit, like for people that want to invest and buy houses. I mean, to get, I guess, at least traditional kind of bank money or even hard money. Is that true, or is that what do you and other investors do for capital?
Most of the stuff we do, the good thing about Detroit is it's such a low entry. It's such a low investment.
Right.
Other things that almost all of our transactions are cash, but it's a lot easier to do a $10,000 cash transaction than it is to buy a property in Atlanta for $110,000. So as far as bank money, it's almost impossible to get bank money. First and foremost, because there's almost no banks out there that will do any kind of mortgage or lending under $30,000 or $50,000, and most of our properties are well under that in the city. Hard money, you have to have a really rock solid plan. So you got to lay it out. You got to get them involved. Say, hey, I got this guy. Let them talk to me. Hopefully, they've heard of me through the industry somewhere or another, and then you might get some hard money on it. But most of it's just cash transactions. People pooling money. I have a lot of investors that have friends, people that have money to spend normally hang out with other rich people. So a lot of people pool money together so they can do more investments. That's probably the easiest way to do it. And I would say 99% of everything we do is cash transactions, a little hard money and almost no bank money.
Okay. Well, Greg, I don't know if you know the show. I really, what I love out of doing the show is to meet other entrepreneurs. I just get jazzed about hearing about other people's businesses and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people that listen do too. But maybe if you're okay, we could talk about your business structure a little bit in the context of how you started in one place and you saw a need and kind of bolted things on through your construction company and your property management company. And that's pretty typical for real estate investors to either start as a broker or they didn't have their license at all, but then they evolved into a brokerage and have property management, maybe hard money lending. There's some typical things that kind of get bolted on. Maybe could you talk about, just kind of share your experience and why you did certain things, and there's probably some other opportunities. I struggle with saying no to opportunities, and I'm blessed to have a lot of opportunities, so I get bogged down. But I'm sure there's other opportunities you had to kind of bolt things on or do something, but you chose to I'm just going to outsource that to this company or this person because they can do it better than me, and I don't want to do that. But just talk about kind of how your business grew, and maybe give some context too to the type of unit volume you're doing of houses that you're buying. I know you're doing quite a bit, and you haven't really mentioned that yet, but talk about kind of how much volume you're doing and then how it made sense to bolt certain things on or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started as, like I said earlier, about 12 years ago, I started in real estate right out of high school. I graduated high school, and then I was like, no, I don't want to go to college. I'm going to do something else. So I had a buddy who worked at a real estate one office, and he was like, yeah, come to work for me. It's pretty relatively easy to get your license. Spend 2 weeks. You're a smart enough guy. You'll be fine at it. So I did that. So I got my license. I was like, hey, this is better than going to college. I don't want to have a big, huge college bill whenever I get out. Not that saying college isn't a good idea. I was just saying it wasn't for me at the time. So I did it and passed, got my license. And I was so excited. Come Monday morning, I went to work. I was so excited. I got there. They gave me a desk. I got it all set up. I had my computer set up. I sat down. I'm like, all right, time to do real estate. And then I looked around and I went, wait, what do I do? I literally had no idea what to do. I was brand new. So the guy, his name was Alex, he kind of helped me out a little bit, gave me some leads, and I started to try to build my business. And I realized this was incredibly hard. It's not at all easy to build a real estate business. So I was like, maybe this isn't for me. So I went back I decided to go to college. So I went to college, Michigan State, and graduated with a software engineering degree. I always loved computers and everything. So I became a software developer, focused a lot on building softwares, PHP, C++, things like that. So I was doing a lot of that. And one day I went on Craigslist and I was looking, I seen an ad that somebody was looking for a developer for a real estate software company. And I was like, this is perfect. So I filled the ad and I went in for an interview, and they started talking to me, doing my interview, and they're like, wait, you're a realtor as well? And I said, yeah. And they said, oh my gosh, you're perfect. And I said, all right, let's try this out. So I went in originally trying to just code. So I was going to sit behind a computer and write code all day and just collect my 40-hour check and go home. And I kind of put real estate on the back burner up until this point. I'd sold maybe 5 or 6 houses in 6 years, and just was never really my passion. But they asked me a lot of questions, so I started to do coding, and then the team would come over and they'd say, hey, well, how do you feel as a realtor about this? And I would say, okay. So very long story short, I ended up getting out of coding altogether. I ended up becoming a partner in that company, and it started off with like 10 users. It was a subscription-based software. It had like 10 users, and whenever I left, it had 10,000 or something like that.
Wow.
We did really well, and I had a really good run with it. Did it for about 2 years, made a lot of money, and I said, okay, I'm going to take my buyout and go do the next thing. But all along, I was thinking real estate because I was really enjoying building it and helping realtors out, and it was for realtors and title companies and escrow and attorney, things like that. So I remembered how much I liked it. I just didn't like that I went to work as a real estate agent and made no money. So I took my money, and I could have just went and took a vacation or something like that. I had, I wasn't a millionaire, but I had a decent enough amount of money that, as a young man, that I could have just relaxed for a little while. So I went back to real estate, and I started doing some traditional sales, and went to work for a realty executive's office here in town. And I started doing decent with that, and I started to pick up and things like that. And I was loving it. I was really enjoying it. And one day my phone rang, and it was a gentleman from California. And he said, hi, I'm interested in buying some investment properties. And I said, okay, let me try to find somebody to refer you to. And he said, we talked. We kind of built a little bit of a relationship on the phone. We talked for maybe 2 or 3 hours. And he said, no, let's do this together. And I said, okay, I'm willing to try, but I have no idea what I'm doing. I'll just be honest with you. And he said, that's fine. We'll learn together. And come to find out, the guy had been a veteran real estate investor. He'd been a mortgage broker in California for over 30 years. He was just this really big time guy. And he's like, no, I think you're my guy out there. And I said, okay. So we bought one property in Detroit. This was in 2009, 2010. Things were starting to get really bad, and they were really cheap. So we bought one. I said, okay, now we need to rehab it. I said, okay, let's rehab it. So he's like, find somebody. So I went on Craigslist. He went on Craigslist. We were like looking for somebody to rehab these properties. And he got his money stolen 2 or 3 different times. Just horrible situation. So he was really upset. And I was like, oh, well, all I can do is call again. So we went to call a bigger corporation here in town, a bigger contractor. They wanted a fortune. It wasn't even worth it. They didn't even want to go into Detroit. So long story short, I said, well, let me try to bring this in-house. So I brought the construction company in-house and started to do it. At the same time, we finally got through our first one and our second property, but we needed to rent them out. So we were sending them out to a property management company, multiple here in town. Most of them were ran in someone's basement. big, huge property managers really were guy in his PJs,
Right.
scraping by and never doing anything. So we were missing owner payments. We were getting money stolen from us, embezzled, this, that, and the other. And he's like, forget that. And I said, all right, I'll bring that in-house too. So all the things that have happened to me kind of fell into my plate more or less. I was just a victim of circumstance in a good way. And all of those things, I had crossroads. I could have either continued to search harder to find somebody to outsource it to, or I could have pulled the pants up and said, I'm going to do it myself. So all of those have came with trial and error. A lot of them have came with failures and growing hiccups and things like that. One thing I tell my staff all the time, and I tell them, and I don't think they quite get it yet, but I tell them it's really, really easy to suffer from success. And that's such a weird statement to people. How can you suffer from success? But you really can. If you don't staff yourself properly, if you don't have the right people in place, if you don't have everything that you need formally laid out. If somebody comes in and says, let's buy 1,000 properties, I would love to, because that's a bunch of money for us. But at the same time, can I handle it? Right. So all the things to kind of bring everything I'm saying together was all of these different pieces that I've added on to what we do here and how I became so good kind of just fell into my lap, and we just grew with it, and I grew steady. A couple of years ago, I wasn't at the point to be able to turn away business. Now I'm at the point where if an opportunity comes to me, even though you and I apparently both don't like to turn an opportunity away, sometimes you have to, because you can drown. You can really drown in success. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, any kind of closing statements or any comments you want to make on what's going on in Detroit there, and then after that tell us how folks can learn more about you and maybe get a hold of you if they want to talk shop in Detroit.
Yeah, on the topic of Detroit, as far as the actual city of Detroit, I know a lot of people are scared of it. A lot of people just hear the word Detroit and they want to run the other way. Detroit, for a long time, has kind of been the nation's punching bag. Everybody's like, oh, things are so bad here. And then you'll hear the jokes, yeah, but at least we're not Detroit. It's really not that bad here. It's still a city. There's still good people here. And there's a lot of things that are in place right now that are really, really turning it around. The bankruptcy, everybody was terrified when they heard Detroit bankruptcy, because the thoughts of one of the biggest cities in the nation going bankrupt. It's like, oh gosh, if that can happen, how bad is it really there? In theory, that was probably the best thing that's ever happened to the city of Detroit, was the bankruptcy. At the point where they declared bankruptcy, 88% of all of the revenue that was coming into the city of Detroit was simply paying pensions. So that means there was only 12% revenue to pay police officers, firefighters, keep the lights on, do the city services, pick up trash, all of these things. So the bankruptcy freed all of that stuff up. It's really a sensitive subject as far as the people that had pensions and what's ultimately going to happen with that. Nice older people who worked for the city for years and things like that. But the city couldn't live, it couldn't breathe with only 12% of its revenue. So now we have 100% of the revenue, and we have a new police chief, James Craig, the police chief. He was he had turned around Los Angeles and some other places. He's a really high profile guy. They went to him and said, hey, we need a police chief, and we hear you're the best guy in town. And he said, I would love to come there. So he's came. They got task force going on. I just seen him on the news the other day. He was out. They took down like 26 drug houses in one morning. He's a phenomenal guy, real rough around the edges, but he's a phenomenal guy, and he's cleaning up big time. The streetlights are going back on. People are actually picking trash up. Chase Bank of Manhattan, or JP Chase Morgan, they committed $200 million to the city that's helping out. They're demolishing a lot of the houses, so they're burnt down in the vacants. They're finally getting around to tearing a lot of those down. There's just a lot of really good things happening.
Great.
The corruption's kind of going out of the window, and it's still going to take a lot of time to get us back to the city that we were in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But that's okay, because you know what that means? That means there's a lot of opportunity for yourself, myself, and all of our
Absolutely. Awesome. So if folks want to learn more about buying rental properties or different ways they might be able to work with you or get involved in investing in Detroit, where should they go?
Yeah, they can definitely look us up on our website, imaginehomerealty.com. They can call our offices anytime between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Central Time at 313-456-9898. or email me personally. I'll give my email address out, and I'm always willing to talk to somebody, even if it's not even investing wise, or you just want some coaching, or you bought a bad property in Detroit, you don't know what to do with it, or any of the surrounding areas. Give me a shout. It's G White, so first initial, last name, at imaginehomerealty.com. And
awesome.
Yeah, if
awesome.
Talk to any of the other departments, they've got a property they want to rehab it or whatever. Just call the offices. We're all here in the same office, and we can transfer amongst one another. So yeah, I look forward to hopefully talking to a lot of people, whether it be buying and holding, whether it be buying and flipping to other investors, or just doing some of the properties out in the suburbs. We have amazing opportunity for actual regular flips right now. And the good thing is, as I discussed, with everything being within 10 miles of each other, there's a lot of money to be made flipping a property in maybe a Hazel Park or a Ferndale or a Madison Heights, some of the other cities outside of Detroit. Buy those properties for 30, 40 grand, put 10 grand into them and sell them for 70 or 80. So flip is probably the hottest thing around right now.
Wow. Great. Hey, Greg, thanks for your time today. Definitely appreciate you opening our eyes a little bit to Detroit, and wish you all the best up there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. And hopefully I did open some eyes, and, people aren't so scared. Get off the plane, come see me. And anytime you're in Detroit, look it up, catch a ball game. Hopefully we're going to win the World Series this year. I'm turning 30, and the last time the Tigers won the World Series, I was about 2 months old. So I'm saying for my 30th birthday this year, the Tigers are going to win the World Series.
There you go. Hey, awesome.
Right.
Hey, best of luck, and please stay in touch, okay?
Absolutely. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, we'll see you.
Cheers.
Are you a member of flipnerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit flipnerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry, so get on over to flipnerd.com.